Thank you. And thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. And hello to everybody. It's lovely to be here. This is my first time, but I don't think it will be my last time because this is really interesting. So I am here to talk a little bit about a piece of research that we have launched just a couple of weeks ago on natural resource management. Just a quick sort of introduction into who we are in case you haven't been in contact with GSMA before. So we are the Association for Mobile Network Operators, and I work in Mobile for Development, which is sort of the international development arm of GSMA. We sit in the intersection between the mobile ecosystem and the development sector. And we work a lot with innovation, and we have a focus on low and middle income countries. So our main sort of anchor is our research, but we also work with local market engagement and advocating for the cause through, for example, partnership building and providing grant funding through our innovation funds, which I will also talk a little bit about a little bit later. So I sit in the Climate Tech program, which is funded by FCDO and ZEDA. And we obviously have a climate focus, looking at topics like the circular economy and plastics. And we just today launched a report on digital climate finance. But now I will talk about our work in natural resource management. So this particular piece of research was led by GSMA's Climate Tech program, but it was also in partnership with the REDAA program, which is funded by FCDO and managed by IIED. And we had a research partner here called Busara Center for Behavioral Economics, which helped us with all the desk research and interviews and so on. So I obviously won't be able to do any type of deep dive into our findings because we don't have enough time for that. But I will try to give a brief overview and some sort of key findings, and also show you where you can read the report. And we will also organize a webinar later on in May, in which we will dive a little bit deeper. And we will also have representatives from REDAA and the case studies as well. So the research in general shows that digital solutions can improve the efficiency of natural resource management in the Global South. And this can range from the use of mobiles and satellites through to frontier technologies like AI. But there is a lack of documentation and data on its impact, and that's sort of where we come in here. We have some previous research, which you can see here on the screen with the Digital Dividends Report from 2020, which showed that local engagement is really important to ensure the responsible and fair uptake of digital solutions in NRM. And this is what we wanted to explore a little bit further in this new piece of research, which specifically focus on the barriers and incentives for local engagement. So let's see. We started looking at the power dynamics, and we can see that digital technology can help address inequalities in NRM when they are applied well. But if solutions don't take the local context into account, it can result in excluding certain groups from the decision-making process. And if inequalities are not understood properly, the solutions may only help individuals who, for example, have access to smartphones or have a higher digital literacy. So with all of that in mind, we identified 4 main categories of barriers to uptake of NRM solutions. And when I say NRM, I mean natural resource management, obviously. So one of the barriers that we saw were structural barriers. And with that, we mean poor internet connectivity, limited smartphone access, or issues with costs related to the tech. For example, smartphone access can in some communities be concentrated among members who are younger or male, and smartphone-based solutions may in those cases exclude harder to reach groups and can reinforce existing inequalities. Technical barriers mean limitation in the technology or digital solution itself. if the user feels like the technology is too complicated or confusing, they are not likely to use it in the long run. We also saw social barriers, and here we look at things such as social norms and the internal ways of communicating within the communities, which need to be considered. And then we also have motivational barriers, which are a result of just human tendencies to behave in certain ways. And here we include barriers like limited attention spans, personal circumstances, or resistance to change. The end users need to properly feel like the solution is directly solving a problem in their daily lives in order to use them, basically. So after identifying these barriers, we dove deeper into 3 case studies to understand the barriers better and develop best practices. And so here are our sort of key ingredients for success. Some of them might seem a bit intuitive, but I still felt like they were important to highlight. So the first thing we saw was how important it is to co-create when you're designing these solutions. So by using this approach, we recognize local communities and indigenous people's deep understanding and knowledge of their environment and challenges. And an example of this that we saw came from Geo Indigenous Alliance, who use hackathons to co-design directly with indigenous communities. And a solution that came out of this type of hackathon was the Namunya Gap, which allows the Samburu community in northern Kenya to design and develop maps to document their land's natural resources. And the map uses symbols and words that are relevant to the community, and that way they bypass communication and language barriers. Secondly, we saw that it's very important to make it easy to use. The solutions need to be simple and intuitive. One example we saw in our research came from India Observatory and their CLART app, which is used to improve planning and management of soil and water resources in communities in India. The app translates complex data into simple color-coded maps, which are available in local languages. The third ingredient we saw was to provide direct rewards for using the solution. So especially financial incentives were found to be successful, which maybe is not very surprising. But an example here is the Fair Tree Pay to Grow system, which uses the Tree Tracker app, which incentivizes users in East Africa to grow and maintain trees. Fair Tree provides direct payments at regular intervals after a new tree has been planted, and this both incentivizes the survival of the trees and provides a source of income for the user. And then the fourth ingredient was to create partnerships. So disseminating the technology through trusted individuals in the community is critical here. One example from Sumatra, Indonesia, is where the Rainforest Connection partnered with established NGO BiodAIverse to introduce their acoustic monitoring devices to help protect forests from illegal logging and poaching. So, in the report, we also outlined recommended steps for the design process. I won't go into that now because we don't really have time for that. But like I mentioned before, we will have a webinar later on in May, which you are all welcome to join. And if you want to know more about that, you can either keep an eye on our webpage or contact me directly. We don't have a registration out for it quite yet, but we will eventually. And we will be then hosting this webinar together with REDAA and the 3 case studies as well. I also want to point out that this is an ongoing piece of research, and we are right now looking into the next steps. So we are looking into some design thinking activities, and I'd like to just encourage organizations that might be working with these topics and might be interested in participating and maybe test out some of our conclusions or work with us to further develop guidelines and so on, to just contact me directly, and let's stay in touch. So I mentioned at the start that we also work with grant funding. So it just happens to be that we have a fund open at the moment, which is called the GSMA Innovation Fund for Climate Resilience and Adaptation 2.0. And this is funded also by FCDO and CEDA. And we are looking for startups, SMEs, and social enterprises in Africa, South and Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, a few countries in Latin America and Eastern Europe, who work with digital solutions for climate resilience and adaptation. So that might be interesting for some of you who are joining us today. Just a little information on our priorities here, what we're looking for. We are specifically prioritizing projects that focus on targeting vulnerable populations and or ecosystems in coastal areas, small island states, or urban settings. We're also looking for solutions that tackle challenges posed by extreme weather events. We're looking for nature-based solutions, specifically looking at regenerative agriculture, sustainable forestry, or coastal and wetland ecosystem conservation and management. And we are also interested in sustainable consumption and production, specifically looking at reducing food loss and waste, improving sustainability and biodiversity of fisheries, and managing air pollution. And we would also like to encourage, especially female entrepreneurs, to apply. We have a lot more information on this. I obviously can't spend more time on that, but go into our web page, which is linked here. I'll pop it in the chat as well. And you'll find all of the T's and C's and frequently asked questions there. You can also, if you have specific questions, there's an email there where you can contact us. And for any questions on the research that I just presented or for any future engagement, just contact me directly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leila.